This is the new Vauxhall Mokka GSE. Basically, on paper, it looks identical to the brilliant Alfa Junior Veloce and equally brilliant Abarth 600e. But this costs 7 grand less than the Alfa and 4 grand less than the Abarth. So is this the most bargainous way into a fun family electric car? Let's find out. Remember VXR, the performance badge that Vauxhall dropped like last decade? Well, this, as a GSE, kind of picks up from where that left off. And if you're old enough to remember the Astra GTE from the 20th century, well, this also kind of picks up from that, but albeit with an electric motor under the bonnet. Because we have a 281 horsepower e-motor under there, powering the front wheels, and it does that via a limited slip differential, a Torsen mechanical one, which for the nerds out there means it's going to put the power down pretty well, or so it should do, and we'll test that in a moment. But also you'll notice we've got 20-inch alloy wheels all round, and they come wrapped in Michelin Pilot Sport EV tyres, which means they're grippy as well as electric focused. And look, you can also spot some brightly finished brake calipers. They're 4-piston calipers and they grip onto 380mm discs. So not only do we have loads of punch to put the power down, we got a load of braking performance to slow it down as well. And it gets even better because the suspension on this car is basically the same as what you got on the Alfa and the Abarth. So you got hydraulic bump stops and a 10mm lower ride height than the normal Mokka. So it means it should be cushioned but also sporty. And if you're a real nerd like me, you'll also spot there's a bit of negative camber on this front axle, which means, well, it should be quite pointy. And at the back of the car, well, the muscular design features continue. Like the front, we've got a chunkier rear bumper, but we've also gained this slightly more prominent roof spoiler as well, just to add to the sportiness. And underneath, well, you won't be able to see it, but there is actually a stiffer rear anti-roll bar. In fact, it's so stiff, it's almost twice as stiff as the standard Mokkas. So that means, if you don't know what a rear anti-roll bar does, it basically means the car is going to be a lot more firm at the rear and it won't roll around as much, which should make it a bit more playful on the limit. We'll test that in a little bit. Oh, and while I'm here, this is where you charge the car. Of course, it's fully electric. And while we have a 54 kilowatt hour battery, it can charge at 100 kilowatts, which is okay. It means we'll get from 10 to 80% on a fast charger in about 30 minutes. So that's sort of middle-ish of the class, but the range, well, that is 209 miles if you go for the more sensible Goodyear tyres. If you go for these racy Michelins, well, then it's 201 miles of range, which, yeah, in 2025 and especially in 2026, doesn't feel particularly competitive. And you know what, getting in this GSE initially, it's not the best of news because I can't tell I'm in a GSE. It just feels like a standard Mokka. I mean, yeah, okay, there are screens and everything's fairly easy to use. I've got manual heater controls, which is definitely good these days because a lot of them go in there now. But this one has buttons where you want them and on the steering wheel as well. But, well, the general vibe just feels standard Vauxhall. And I mean, Vauxhall themselves have said that they've kind of lost the fun and the raciness from their brand. So the fact that this feels very standard means it doesn't feel very racy. But thankfully, you do get a few very key additions. And the main ones, in fact, are these seats. Because the seats I'm sat on, just like the ones you get in an Abarth and the Alfa as well, they're slightly different, but they're really good at pinching you and you can sit really low as well. They're nice and supportive, and yet they're still somehow quite comfortable as well. And as I mentioned, those manual controls, when you think about driving quickly, the last thing you want to do is dive into the menus. So having these manual switches actually means when you drive this car more enthusiastically, it's slightly easier to use on the go. So while it's not pretty and while this steering wheel could definitely do with a lick of colour, overall, it's actually a nice interior to live with. And that's also true when you're diving into the menus. You've got Apple CarPlay and Android Auto wirelessly. And the menus, while they're nothing particularly interesting, they're simple and you can just use them without thinking too hard. Plus, and I'll show you these on the go, there's an easy way to switch off all the annoying driver bings and bongs you get these days. Now, the Mokka is of course popular with younger couples, if you've got a baby, for example, or if you're a couple or even a singleton, or maybe you're an estate agent with one of these on your company car list. And I think that will still be true with the GSE because rear legroom remains okay. It's not too bad for an adult, but it's definitely going to be better for kids. And boot space is decent. You've even got a bit of underfloor storage as well. So it's usable, and just like a normal Mokka, it's easy to get by. I just wish they'd thrown a bit more colour up here. Oh, talking of cars that are easy to live with, if you fancy yourself a new motor, did you know that there is a very helpful comparison tool built into the Cinch app which you can download using the QR code on screen. Using that comparison tool, you can not only look at two different cars and their boot spaces and their range if they're electric, but you can also compare all the other most important things with car buying and car choosing. So use the QR code on screen and have a little browse. Okay, so what is it like to drive? You've seen the specs, you've seen the upgrades, but how does that translate on the road? Well, you know what? Initially, and this is a very good thing, I can feel a lot of familiarity with the Alfa Junior Veloce and the Abarth 600e, which of course this shares all those parts with. But with that unique tuning, how does it differ? That's the key thing. Those cars are really agile, but this car, chuck it in, yeah, it still feels really keen on the nose. Come on, there's no steering feel, but it's an electric car. They don't really have steering feel, do they, at this side of Porsche? But what it does have is it has tremendous amounts of grip, and it's almost like the quicker you go into a corner, the more it grips. And that's true when you're going into the corner and turning in, but also when you're powering out. Because of that mechanical limited slip differential, it really claws you out of the bend like a puppy chasing after a golf ball you've just chucked. How does the back of the car feel though? Yeah, it feels settled at medium speed, but if I trail a brake in, if I hold my foot on the brake pedal as I go into the corner, and then I just turn it, I can feel the back of the car starting to play with me a little bit. It feels stable, it feels safe, it feels fun but forgiving. But if you really, really hustle it, it becomes a bit of a hooligan.
All right, I have to admit, when I did take it on track later in the day, yeah, I know, Mokka on track, how mad are we? It wasn't quite as lively as the Alfa would be through the corners. It didn't cock a wheel like that car did. And the Abarth is definitely the more overall playful model because I think it's the stiffest of the lot on the rear. This Mokka is slightly more forgiving, but it's still definitely fun.
What about the fundamentals though? Going quick and driving fast is one thing, but is it easy to drive? Well, the ride, actually, after initially feeling a little bit fidgety, you can definitely feel it's on big 20-inch alloy wheels. But once you get over 15, 20 miles per hour, so in town, it's a bit fidgety. Once you get above that speed, it starts to flow, it starts to smooth out a bit, and in fact, it feels quite cushioned because of those hydraulic bump stops that I mentioned. I can hear a bit of road noise, a bit of wind noise, and when we've got big, grippy tyres on this car and the door mirrors in the Mokka are just chunky. So look, it's not the most refined car at motorway speeds, but you know, that won't be massively surprising to most of you, will it? And then of course, there is the elephant in the room. I've been driving this car for about 40 minutes now, and of course most of those minutes have been me driving like this, which is quite quick, but I have used about 35% of the battery in that time, so that means you are going to obviously be range limited if you want to drive this car enthusiastically. That's also true in the Alfa, it's also true in the Abarth, and it's also true in the Alpine A290, which admittedly is a smaller, slightly different type of car, but it's got a similar issue of range and performance. Performance is good, but the range just doesn't let you do this all day long, not surprisingly.
And that's despite the fact that the Mokka GSE actually has a pretty powerful one-pedal driving setting. If you press B mode, it ramps up the regen so you can almost have a full one-pedal driving experience. You only have to use those brakes when you're coming to a complete stop, or when you're driving so quickly you need to really stamp on the anchors. And rest assured, when you do,
the brakes are, yeah, they're really, really strong. I mean, they are, I've got a slight headache now, they work pretty well.
Although the standout feature of the GSE is definitely that limited slip differential. It is so much fun powering out of corners and feeling it just tug you towards the inside. It makes for a key advantage over the Alpine A290, which doesn't have a limited slip differential. Not yet, anyway.
Okay, let's calm things down and let's see what it's like in normal mode, just driving steadily. I mean, as I said, the road noise, the wind noise remains there. Comfort is decent. It really is the sort of car with adaptive cruise control, a speed limiter, and thank God, a shortcut button to switch off the most annoying bings and bongs from the driver assistance stuff. It means it's a car you could do many miles in, even if you drive at a steady pace. This is definitely not an out-and-out performance machine that's gonna give you a headache or exhaust you on a longer drive. So long as you can get to where you need to with the range it has, which is, let's be frank, 200-ish miles at best, it's a pretty easy car to live with overall. It's kind of just like a standard Mokka-e, albeit with 345 Nm of torque. So at the start of this video, I said, is the Mokka GSE just a more bargain way of getting into an Alfa Junior Veloce or an Abarth 600e? And well, the answer to that technically is yes, because you've got the same fundamental fun electric car platform, which on twisty roads is honestly brilliant. But that does come at a cost. Obviously not in the literal sense, because this car's several grand cheaper than its siblings, and it is alongside an Alpine A290 that has less power and no limited slip diff, and it's smaller as well. But I mean, the Mokka, even with its better stance and its slight camber on the wheels, it doesn't look anywhere near as racy. So overall, I think if you want an understated car, you'll like that, but for everyone else, it's going to be hard to ignore the Alfa and the Abarth as well, isn't it? And of course, then there's the range. So I guess if you're a performance car driver who really wants an electric car that's fun, it's the same as the other two versions, but those are more appealing. But if you have one of these on your company car list, if you think, should I upgrade to the GSE Mokka? The answer to that is yeah, definitely. This is really, really fun to drive. And I guess as a Kickstarter for Vauxhall's new GSE brand, it's a great start. But something tells me with the Peugeot E208 GTI coming out next year, and Vauxhall hinting via a Gran Turismo concept that there might be a Corsa version of this, I think there's even more fun to come.